The British policeman reporting.
Oh, you're here, Denzil? I'm here.
Yes, we're hearing your
Foggy! Where's Foggy?
Foggy's not in your telly.
No.
In Santa Claus is Coming to Town, next Friday at 8, 7...
I believe in yesterday.
Follow that, JR!
In the night.
Central, a breathtaking scenic tour through the roads of Finland.
In half an hour, Jonathan arranges for Mark and Linda to swap roles so each can see life from the other's point of view. A change of life on the highway to heaven at 5:30. Now, we're all clued up.
Wednesday night, 7:30 on Central and Coronation Street.
Now on Central, it's the South Bank Show and a chance to hear some of the most daring music from the history of rock and roll.
In half an hour on Central, Bill and Faith take the plunge for the last time in Second Thoughts. That's after Surgical Spirit.
The search for a super person continues in tonight.
Benny and the Jets and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. Just two of the great songs coming up now from Elton John in Central Park.
Central Lobby tonight looks at the controversy over whether or not hospital patients should be given compulsory checks for AIDS. That's at 10:35, following the latest national and international news. It's 10 o'clock.
In just over half an hour, we've boxing. Robert Dickey defends his WBA Super Featherweight title. But first, the latest national and international news. In just over half an hour, we've boxing. Robert Dickey defends his WBA Super Featherweight title. But first, the latest national and international news.
That follows the latest national and international news from the studios of ITN with news at 10-ish.
Well, now on Central, the Campbells find themselves in a captive situation.
Sunday afternoon, and you're watching Central.
Sunday night on Central and the James Bond premiere for your eyes only.
Central Weekend investigates the ins and outs of espionage with ex-CIA and MI5 agents. Not a lighter note the style or lack of it of punks. Central Weekend at 10:35.
Now, slightly later than scheduled, our Master of Terror movie, Madhouse.
Now on Central, let's strike it lucky.
We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Central, it's the second day of 1987, and we've got unlimited wheelies with those international BMX beaters in a moment, following a quick browse through this evening.
In half an hour time, watch out because it's the worst witch here on Central. But now, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree. In half an hour time, watch out because it's the worst witch here on Central. But now, Winnie the Pooh and the Honey Tree.
This is Central on Christmas Holiday Monday. It's 12:30, time for the news.
Now on Central, it's Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day.
In half half an hour, Jonathan arranges for Mark and Linda to swap roles so each can see life from the other's point of view. A change of life on the highway to heaven at 5:30. Now we're all clued up.
We have a treat for Cleo Lane fans later this evening when she sings some of her favourite songs by Stephen Sondheim. That's at 10:40, but now a treat for Bond fans.
Spike Milligan plays his own father in Adolf Hitler, My Part in His Downfall, our Movie Mania presentation at 1:25 this Friday night. Now it's news time.
Now it's an hour of comedy. At 10:35, Hale and Pace introduces to the Yuppies from Outer Space. First, we welcome back Spitting Image. You're watching Central.
Placid Detective Inspector Regan and the gentle Detective Sergeant Carter are fighting crime their own way in The Sweeney, next here on Central.
And later tonight at 11, there's a profile of Cliff Richard. Well, that's much later. Back to this afternoon, and in a moment on Central.
Could it be that Bunny's is closing? The Young Doctors next on Central.
And his pupil help two ladies in distress overcome a dangerous man. Lee Van Cleef is the master. Next on Central.
Hope you enjoyed tonight's film. If you like good music, you'll love Elton John. He's coming up next tonight in an open-air concert recorded live in Central Park, New York.
The problems are never ending because coming up next we have Emmerdale Farm, and the big blow-up between Jack and Joe cannot be postponed any longer. That's next. One of the biggest and most over-the-top of the Bond movies is premiered on Central next for your...
In a moment, we begin our two-part saga of passion and strife set in Australia.
Alfred Burke is the leading light of Tales of the Unexpected, which crops up in around 20 minutes' time. Tonight's tale is The Flypaper. However, next we have news from ITN.
Later this afternoon, Christopher Reeve flies into action against Lex Luthor and 3 other mega-villains in Superman 2. That's at 4 o'clock.
And our movie premiere on Sunday night sees Telly Savalas stepping into Lee Marvin's boots to lead the Dirty Dozen on a deadly mission.
Yes, and there's action, adventure, and a liberal sprinkling of passion in tonight's movie, which stars Diane Keating in The Little Drummer Girl, and you can see that at 12:20. And talking about films, for all you Western buffs, tomorrow afternoon at 3 we have Burt Lancaster and Kirk Douglas in the classic Gunfight at the OK Corral. But now on Central, it's more like a bunfight behind the bike sheds with Spitting Image.
We've a corking concert for you in an hour's time, a new series which goes by the name of Live and Loud. 10cc kick-off at 3:15. Next, though, the headlines. The thriller chiller this week sees Klaus Kinski amid transistors and resistors bent on creating a female humanoid robot. Android is at midnight on Tuesday.
You're watching Central. In 5 minutes, the Young Doctors. Before then, we've got today's recipe. It's for cheesy souffle roll. The full details in a moment.
We're looking forward to taking our table for breakfast at Tiffany's along with Audrey Hepburn, George Peppard and Mickey Rooney. That's at 1:30 a.m. tonight here on Central.
The world's self-confessed greatest detective is the appallingly smug Hercule Poirot. His latest caper is next.
Sport on Central. There's soccer and ice skating later tonight with highlights of the UEFA Cup game between Bayern Munich and Hearts, plus our first visit to the World Figure Skating Championships in Paris. A double bill of sport starting tonight at 11:15.
Watching Central and our James Bond movie.
There are 12 acts waiting in the wings now to find out which one of them is the new face of 88. Now we're going live for the new faces of 88 grand final results.
Now on Central, Jekyll and Hyde.
Now Dirty Dancing, one of the programmes broadcast by Central in Nikam digital stereo were available.
Now a chance to see the complete Hudson Confidential edition dealing with domestic violence, originally transmitted in February.
And now on Central, Stand Up Virgin Soldiers.
That's a movie not to be missed. Meanwhile, after the news, Eddie Murphy stars in 48 Hours. On the ITV network, this is Central. That's a movie not to be missed. Meanwhile, after the news, Eddie Murphy stars in 48 Hours. On the ITV network, this is Central. And also tonight, a behind-the-scenes look at LA Law as we celebrate the 100th episode of this award-winning series. That's at 11:40. Now, Central News.
Now on Central and earlier than advertised in some magazines, a big fight special. You're watching Central. In an hour, another case for Telly Savalas as Kojak. But first, it's 1969 and the place is Saigon as we continue our tour of duty.
Now on Central, American college football.
The following is...
Home and away heartthrob Craig McLachlan turns up at Albert Dock this morning on Central at 10:35.
Now on Central, for better or for worse, it's Sergeant Cruchot of the Saint-Tropez Gendarmerie.
That was an extra programme, but now we're back on course with Cue the Music and the Chieftains.
Now on Central and earlier than advertised in some magazines, a big fight special.
Now on Central, on this summer afternoon, there's a chill in the air.
Chris Tarrant has an unusual view of television in half an hour, a Tarrant on TV special after Hale and Pace.
on Central, drama with David Jason as Frost.
You're watching Central. Now, as British summertime ended at 2 o'clock, the time is now coming up to 4 minutes past 1 Greenwich Mean Time. Time for the latest from ITN.
I'm very sorry, but due to technical problems, we're unable to bring you War of the Worlds. Instead, Edward Woodward is the equaliser.
Channel 4 News has just started here on Central. Time to take your pick.
In an hour, Jeremy Beadle unwraps some more camcorder catastrophes in a You've Been Framed Christmas special. And speaking of Christmas specials, here's one now. Heartbeat.
to be amused by Lee Evans. If it's mad comedy you want, stay with Central. It's the Lee Evans Show in 15 minutes. That's after the latest news.
Now on Central, it's time for news.
Channel 4's main news bulletin of the day is starting now. Here on Central,
we're off to Emmerdale.
Now on Central, memorable moments for England in ITV Sport Classics.
The coppers are a little more localised now. They have a bill.
Medical drama in half an hour. Side Effects is at 11 on Central. First is Susie Becker with another edition of Our House.
Now a little comedy with Paul Merton.
Time now on Central for another front page story from the New York News.
Now on Central, the mad, the bad, and the dangerous to know of Emmerdale. Our drama following the weather is Child Lost Forever. First, news from ITN.
You're watching Central. Now another assignment for the Close Protection Group. Bodyguards.
You're watching Central. It's now 10 o'clock and time for the news with Trevor McDonald.
CITV begins in 10 minutes on Central after the latest news. Tonight's movie on Central stars Jacqueline Smith in a tense thriller, In the Arms of a Killer, at 10:45. A giggle now, though, in the company of Chris Tarrant, 10 years on TV.
Now the latest regional news from Central.
The latest news from our part of the world now, Central News.
It's time now for a roundup of today's stories relevant to your part of the region, reported and presented by your own Central News team. And at the heart of the independent television network, this is Central, where your regional news team has a roundup of today's stories.
Now on Central, it's a short trip to Emmerdale.
Now the latest from the Nationwide League, Central Soccer Weekend. In 10 minutes, the lunchtime bulletin from ITN. That's after Central News.
Now on Central, Emmerdale. You're with Central News.
Now on Central, Ben Elton getting in the odd word or two at the Brit Awards 97. Throughout the day, our reporters and camera crews have been gathering stories from your part of the region. These are brought to you now by your own Central News team. Formula One action now on Central. Highlights from race 13 of the 1997 World Championship, the Italian Grand Prix.
hour's time, the first in a new series of Saturday Night at the Movies presented by Tony Slattery. But first, The Secret Policeman's Biggest Ball.
Now on Central, Shaw Taylor with Police 5.
Now, British Food and Farming Year provides the theme for Highway in West Wales.
It's Sport Now on Central and later at 10:35 with the Dow Classic Tennis Tournament. But first, it's World Cup 90.
Don Johnson stars as Nash Bridges here on Central ITV in 10 minutes after this.
This is Central ITV and news from ITN.
Now, Tom Jones sings, Jim Davidson tells a few jokes. Let's hope Lennox Lewis just wants to chat. Des O'Connor tonight.
This is Central ITV, and now it's time for the latest news from our part of the world. Now on Central ITV, our movie premiere. On Deadly Ground stars Steven Seagal and Michael Caine, and contains scenes of violence and strong language.
Central ITV, Sigourney Weaver stars in Aliens. This film contains strong language and scenes of violence.
Now on Central ITV, two blokes knock 7 bells out of each other. It's The Big Fight Live.
Now, there were those who said it wouldn't last, and it looks as if they may have been right.
Now on Central ITV, time to find out who's on the receiving end.
Time now to find out where the stars stay in Skegness.
Now highlights of today's Formula One event at Monza.
And we've snooker now on Central ITV. Russ Williams introduces today's coverage of the Liverpool Victoria Championship.
You're watching Central ITV, and the weekend starts here. But now there's a high price to pay.
Now some comedy. Time to go to Hollywood to meet Jenny.
Half an hour from now, we'll be able to see some familiar faces in an unfamiliar setting and celebrity stars in their eyes. First, though, we'll see them as we know them best, in Coronation Street. Today is Nationwide League soccer action now in Central Goals Extra. Our regular review of the past 7 days around our region in Central Newsweek follows in 5 minutes. After Lifeline. You're with Central ITV, where Gabby Yoreth and Barry Venison are on the ball.
Now, Rugby Union Test highlights. England versus the USA.
Now on Central ITV, Rowan Atkinson leaves a trail of seasonal disasters in Do-It-Yourself, Mr. Bean.
Now on Central ITV, gun law hits Emmerdale. Warren Beatty now features in the South Bank show, which contains some fairly strong language.
Now, comedy, music, magic and dancing. What used to be called variety. The Freddie Starr Show.
Meanwhile, tonight's policing here on Central ITV comes with the 60s touch in Heartbeat.
There must be something in the pudding. We've already had one birth in Emmerdale, 2 more now in Coronation Street.
We'll spin the Wheel of Fortune again in half an hour after this week's episode of High Road. Here comes that jolly tune.
And
No toilet seats for prizes now, just pots of money.